Mama.
Her mother died on a Tuesday night, holding her hand, whispering words she didn't fully understand yet. By Friday, her husband had packed a bag. By the following month, he was posting photos with her best friend. And Diane, that's what we'll call her, was left with nothing but a key. A small brass key her dying mother had pressed into her palm and said, "Don't show anyone, not a soul." She had no idea that the key unlocked a secret her mother had kept for over 30 years. A secret worth more than she could count. A secret that was about to make every single person who underestimated her deeply regret it. Stay with me, because this story doesn't just have a twist, it has a reckoning. And the ending? I promise you have never seen anything like it. Before we dive deeper, so let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Everything she had. The last normal day of Diane's life was a Thursday in October. She remembered it clearly because of the light. The way it came through the kitchen window in the morning, warm and golden. The kind of light that makes ordinary things look beautiful. Her coffee cup, the stack of mail on the counter, her mother's voice on the phone, calling just to say good morning, the way she did every single day without fail. "How's my girl?" her mother asked. "Tired," Diane said, laughing softly. "But good, Mama, I'm good. You eat breakfast?" "I'm about to." "Don't skip it. You always skip it." "Mama, I'm just saying, you need to take care of yourself. You work too hard." Diane smiled into the phone, leaning against the counter. Her mother, Gloria, had been saying the same things for 35 years. "Don't skip breakfast. Wear a coat. Call me when you get there." Small words that added up to a lifetime of being loved. She had no idea that 3 months later, she would give anything to hear them again. Gloria was 61 years old when the diagnosis came. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. The oncologist delivered the news in a quiet office with beige walls and a box of tissues on the corner of the desk, the kind of office designed to absorb devastation. Diane sat beside her mother, holding her hand, and watched her mother's face as the doctor spoke. Gloria didn't cry. She nodded slowly, asked 2 or 3 precise, practical questions, and then said, "How long?" The doctor hesitated. "With aggressive treatment, possibly 6 months. Without it, perhaps 3. Gloria looked at Diane. Her eyes were steady, deep, unreadable in the way they sometimes were, like she was seeing something just beyond the surface of the moment. "We'll fight it," Diane said immediately. "Whatever it takes, Mama. Whatever it costs." Gloria squeezed her hand. "Of course we will, baby." But there was something in her voice, something Diane would only understand later. Not resignation, not fear. Something closer to preparation. The treatment was brutal. Chemotherapy twice a week. Hospital visits that stretched into entire days. Gloria lost weight, then hair, then the particular brightness in her eyes that had always made strangers stop and smile at her on the street. Diane rearranged her entire life around her mother's schedule. She worked from hospital waiting rooms. She learned to sleep in those stiff plastic chairs, her head tilted against the wall, her phone clutched in her hand in case a nurse called. Her husband, Robert, was supportive at first, or at least he performed support convincingly. He came to the first 2 hospital visits, stood awkwardly in the doorway with flowers he'd clearly bought from the hospital gift shop, and said the right things. He was sorry. He was there. He loved them both. But by the 2nd month, the visits stopped. By the 3rd month, so did most of the conversations. Diane told herself he was overwhelmed, that grief affected people differently, that he was trying, in his own way, to hold things together at home while she was stretched thin at the hospital. She told herself a lot of things in those months. She was good at it. Her best friend, Serena, was a different story. Serena had been Diane's closest friend since their sophomore year of college, when they'd ended up as lab partners in a biology class neither of them wanted to be in. They'd been inseparable ever since. Through graduation, first jobs, heartbreaks, weddings. Serena had been Diane's maid of honor. She had danced at her wedding with the kind of pure, unguarded joy that only your real friends bring. When Gloria got sick, Serena showed up, not performatively, not with a casserole and a sad face. She showed up practically, consistently, in the way that actually matters. She covered for Diane at work when she needed to leave early for appointments. She sat with Gloria during infusion sessions so Diane could go home and shower and sleep for a few hours. She learned Gloria's favorite songs and would play them softly on her phone during the long, quiet afternoons in the hospital room. Gloria adored her. "That girl has a good heart," she told Diane once, watching Serena laugh at something on her phone and then immediately show Gloria the screen so she could laugh too. "She's the best person I know," Diane agreed. She meant it completely. She had no reason not to. The night everything began to unravel was a Tuesday in January. Gloria had been moved to a private room 3 days earlier. The doctors had stopped talking about treatment and started talking about comfort, about peace, about making the most of the time that remained. Diane understood what that meant. She sat beside her mother's bed that Tuesday night, her fingers laced through her mother's, listening to the machines breathe for her. The room was dim, the only light coming from the monitors and the pale glow of the hallway through the cracked door. Robert had texted at 6 o'clock. "Still at the hospital. I'm heading out with some guys. Don't wait up." Not "How is she?" Not "Do you need me?" Not "I love you, I'm thinking of you, I wish I could be there." Just "Don't wait up." Diane stared at the message for a long time, then turned her phone face down on her thigh and went back to watching her mother breathe. Serena arrived at 8 with coffee and a soft blanket from Gloria's house that she'd thought to bring without being asked. She sat quietly across from Diane, and they didn't speak much because they didn't need to. Some silences between friends are their own kind of language. Around 10 o'clock, Gloria's eyes opened. They were clearer than they'd been in days. That sometimes happened near the end, the doctors had warned Diane. A sudden clarity, brief and precious and devastating. Gloria looked at her daughter for a long moment without speaking. Then slowly she turned her head toward the door. "Serena," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Serena leaned forward. "I'm here, Miss Gloria. Give us a minute, sweetheart." Serena nodded immediately and slipped out of the room, pulling the door gently closed behind her. In the silence that followed, Gloria looked at Diane. Her hand tightened around her daughter's fingers with surprising strength. "Safety deposit box," she whispered. "First National Bank, box 312. The key is in my jewelry box, bottom drawer, hidden compartment in the lining." Diane shook her head. "Mama, please don't worry about. Listen to me." Gloria's voice, thin as it was, carried the weight of something urgent, something she'd been carrying for a very long time. "You go, you open it, and you don't tell anyone. Not Robert, not Serena, not your cousin Marcus, not the pastor, not your Aunt Bev. No one, Diane. Do you understand me?" The intensity in her mother's eyes made Diane's throat tighten. "I understand, Mama, I promise." Gloria seemed to exhale, some held tension releasing from her body. Her grip softened slightly, though she didn't let go. "I want you to know something," she said. "Everything I did for you, every single choice. You may not understand at first, you may be angry with me. Mama, I could never." "Let me finish." A small smile. "You may be angry, but I need you to trust that I knew what I was doing. I knew who you were going to be. I was just waiting for you to know it too." Diane was crying now, tears falling silently down her face. "You're scaring me." "Don't be scared, baby." Her mother's voice was fading, growing softer with each breath. "Be ready, there's a difference." She closed her eyes. "I love you," Diane whispered. "Mama, I love you so much." "My beautiful girl," Gloria murmured, her words dissolving into breath. "My greatest thing." The machines changed their sound at 11:52 p.m. The nurses came quickly and quietly. And Diane stood against the wall and understood, without anyone having to tell her, that the woman who had been the whole center of her world was gone. The days after a death move strangely. Time stretches in some places and collapses in others. Diane found herself capable of making phone calls, arranging flowers, choosing hymns, greeting relatives she barely recognized, all while feeling absolutely nothing, as if grief had wrapped her in something thick and insulating that kept the world at a careful distance. Robert came to the funeral. He sat beside her in the front pew and held her hand during the service. And if you didn't know them, you might have thought he was a devoted husband supporting his grieving wife. But Diane noticed the way he checked his watch twice during the eulogy. She noticed the way he kept his phone on his lap, the screen dimmed but present. She noticed that when an older woman from Gloria's church choir pulled Diane into a fierce, tearful embrace and said, "Your mama talked about you every single Sunday. She was so proud of you, so proud." Robert was already 3 steps away, speaking quietly into his phone. After the repast, he told her he had a work obligation he couldn't miss. "Today," she said. He shrugged, the way he'd been shrugging for months. "It's important, babe." And he left. Serena watched him go from across the room. Her jaw was tight, her eyes hard in a way that Diane noted but didn't have the energy to examine. "He's unbelievable," Serena said quietly. "He's just," Diane started. "Don't defend him." Serena turned to her, and her voice was gentler now, softer. "Not today. You don't have to do that today." Diane nodded. She was too tired to disagree. That night she sat alone in her mother's house, surrounded by the particular silence that belongs only to homes where someone is missing. She could feel her mother everywhere, in the lavender sachets tucked into the linen closet, in the neat stack of devotional books on the nightstand, in the handwritten grocery list still held to the refrigerator door by a magnet shaped like a sunflower. She sat at her mother's kitchen table for a long time, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea that had gone cold, thinking about what Gloria had said. "Be ready. There's a difference." She waited 3 days before going to the jewelry box. She told herself she was waiting because she needed time, and that was true. But she was also waiting because some part of her understood that opening that box would mean stepping through a door she couldn't step back through, and she wasn't quite ready to stop standing in the before. But on the 4th day, she drove to her mother's house, let herself in with her key, and walked to Gloria's bedroom. The jewelry box sat on the dresser exactly where it had always been. Dark wood, carved with a simple pattern of leaves along the edges. Diane had seen it every day of her childhood without ever thinking much about it. She opened it carefully. The familiar pieces were there. A strand of pearls she'd given her mother for her 50th birthday, a pair of gold hoop earrings, a delicate silver bracelet. Diane lifted each piece gently and set it aside, then ran her fingers along the velvet lining of the bottom drawer. There was a slight unevenness to it, a place where the velvet had a subtle give beneath her fingertip. She pressed down. A section of the bottom panel shifted, revealing a shallow hidden compartment no bigger than a paperback book. Inside was a single key, small, brass, old, stamped with the number 312. Diane held it in her palm for a long time. Then she closed her fingers around it, pressed her fist gently to her chest, and whispered into the quiet room, "Okay, Mama, I'm listening." What she left behind, First National Bank, was a building that had survived the city's decades of change by simply refusing to modernize. Red brick exterior, tall limestone columns, brass fixtures that someone polished by hand. Inside, the floors were marble, the ceilings high, and the light had a quality that made you feel, however briefly, that things were solid, permanent, trustworthy. Diane walked in on a Wednesday morning, the key in her coat pocket, her expression carefully neutral. The teller at the front desk was a young woman with kind eyes. "Good morning, how can I help you?" "I need to access a safety deposit box. Number 312. The teller smiled and asked for her identification. Diane slid her driver's license across the counter. The teller typed something into her computer. Her fingers paused. She typed something else. Then she looked up, her expression professionally composed, but her eyes carrying something different now. Something that hadn't been there a moment before. "One moment, please," she said, and disappeared into a back office. Diane stood at the counter, her heart beginning to beat in an irregular, unsettled rhythm. She didn't know why. She just knew that something had shifted in the room the moment that teller looked at her screen. A man in his 60s came out from the back, well-dressed, silver-haired, with the careful posture of someone who had spent decades being trusted with other people's important things. He introduced himself as the branch manager, a man named Gerald Warren. "Miss Diane?" he said, and his voice had a quality she couldn't immediately name. Reverence almost, as if he'd been waiting for this. "Yes, please follow me." He led her down a narrow hallway lined with small metal doors set into the walls, each one numbered, each one holding someone's carefully kept secrets. He stopped at 312, used his key in tandem with hers, and the door swung open. Inside was a single envelope, thick manila sealed with tape that had yellowed slightly with age. "Take all the time you need," Gerald said quietly. "The private room is just here." He gestured to a small door to the left. "There's no rush, none at all." The way he said none at all made Diane look at him more carefully. He met her gaze evenly. "Your mother was a remarkable woman, Miss Diane. I had the privilege of meeting her twice. I just want you to know that." Diane didn't know what to say. She simply nodded, took the envelope, and went into the small room. She sat at the narrow table and stared at the envelope for almost 5 minutes before she opened it. Inside were documents, many of them. Pages and pages of dense legal language, stock certificates with numbers printed in fonts designed to convey significance, real estate deeds with addresses in cities she had never associated with her mother's life, bank statements from institutions she'd never heard of, and a stapled summary page at the front with a single line printed in bold at the bottom. Total estimated estate value, $2.4 billion. Diane read that number 4 times. Then she set the summary page carefully on the table, smoothed it flat with her palm, and read it a 5th time. Beneath the documents, at the very bottom of the envelope, was a letter. Several pages, folded in thirds, written in her mother's handwriting on cream-colored stationery. The same stationery Gloria had used for birthday cards and thank-you notes, and the occasional letter to Diane's teachers when she was young. Diane unfolded it slowly. "The way you handle something that you understand, instinctively, will change you, my dearest Diane," it began. "If you're reading this, I'm gone, and it's time you knew the truth. Not just about what I left you, but about who I was, who I really was, and why I made the choices I made. I was born Gloria Ashford, not Gloria Mitchell as you know me. Ashford, one of the oldest families in this state, though family is perhaps too warm a word for what we were. We were a dynasty, old money, the kind that doesn't show itself because it doesn't need to. I was the only daughter. I was expected to marry a man my father had chosen for me when I was 19 years old. A business arrangement dressed in the language of love. I refused. My father gave me 1 week to change my mind. I spent that week packing. When I left, they disowned me formally, legally, completely. I took nothing. Not a dollar, not a piece of jewelry, not a single item from that house. I wanted nothing that came with conditions attached. I was 23 years old, and I was free. I built everything you see in these documents from that freedom, quietly, strategically, over 3 decades. I lived small on purpose, not because I had to, but because I wanted you to understand something that money can hide from. Children, the value of what you build with your own hands. I watched you grow up. I watched you work. I watched you develop a character that had nothing to do with wealth, or privilege, or the safety net I could have given you at any moment. You became who you are entirely on your own. That was the plan. That was always the plan. And now everything is yours. Everything I walked away from. Everything I built in the years since. Every stock, every property, every account. It all belongs to you, my beautiful daughter, who earned it not by inheriting it, but by becoming someone worthy of it. There is a law firm in New York, Ashford and Sterling. Ask for a man named Edward Ashford. He is my first cousin, the only member of that family who ever understood why I left. He has been managing the trusts for years. He is expecting your call. But Diane, I need to tell you one more thing. I have watched the people around you with the eyes of a mother who loves you too much to be blind. I have seen things you perhaps didn't want to see. I need you to be very careful now. What you have will attract a different kind of attention. It will reveal things about people that have always been true but were hidden by circumstance. Trust slowly, move carefully, and remember what I always told you. The storm doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to show you what you're made of. You are made of something extraordinary, my girl. I always knew. All my love, forever and always. Mama Diane sat in that small room for a very long time. The branch manager, Gerald, knocked softly on the door at one point and asked if she needed anything. Water, perhaps. Tea, she said no thank you, and he withdrew quietly. She read the letter 3 times. She went through every document methodically, even the ones she didn't fully understand, making mental notes of names and numbers and addresses, building a picture in her mind of the empire her mother had assembled in the shadows. Her mother had owned a controlling stake in a regional grocery chain with stores in 4 states. She owned a portfolio of commercial real estate that included shopping centers, office buildings, and warehouse facilities. She owned residential apartment buildings in Atlanta, Charlotte, and Detroit. She had brokerage accounts holding blue chip stocks and index funds. She had offshore accounts in 3 countries. And she had done it all while clipping coupons, while shopping at thrift stores, while working a job in a school cafeteria for 22 years, waking up at 5 in the morning to serve breakfast to children whose parents were barely scraping by. Because she believed, genuinely, deeply believed, that it was honest and important work. Diane thought about her mother at that job, about the way Gloria talked about it, not with resentment or irony, but with real affection. "Those kids need somebody to see them in the morning," she used to say. "Somebody to smile at them before the day gets hard." All that time, all those years, seeing people, loving people, being completely, authentically herself, while quietly being worth billions. Diane pressed her fingers to her mouth. She understood finally what her mother had meant. "You may not understand at first. You may be angry with me." She wasn't angry. She was in awe. She left the bank with the envelope tucked under her arm, walked to her car, and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine for a long time. Her phone had several missed calls, 2 from Robert, 1 from Serena. She looked at Robert's name on the screen. Her mother's words moved through her like a current. "Don't tell anyone. Not a soul." She put the phone in her bag without calling back. Then she drove to a coffee shop on the other side of the city, one where no one knew her, and sat in a corner booth and called the number on the card that had been tucked into the envelope. Ashford and Sterling, New York. She was transferred twice, and then a man's voice came on the line. Warm, measured, with the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades navigating complexity without being rattled by it. "Miss Diane," he said, "we've been waiting for your call. I'm so glad you're safe. I'm so deeply sorry about your mother." "You knew her," Diane said. "It wasn't really a question. I did. For most of my life, she was the bravest person I've ever known." A pause. "I know you have questions. Many of them. I'd like to answer every single one. Would you be willing to come to New York? Whenever you're ready. We'll arrange everything." Diane looked out the window of the coffee shop at the gray January street. "Give me 2 weeks," she said. "Of course. We'll be here." When she hung up, she opened her phone and looked at Robert's missed calls again. And then, for the first time since her mother died, she felt something cut through the grief, something sharp and clarifying and cold. She thought about the text he'd sent while she sat in that hospital. "Don't wait up." She thought about him checking his watch during the eulogy. She thought about all the nights he'd come home late with explanations that were just slightly, barely, almost imperceptibly vague. She thought about her mother's face in that hospital bed, the urgency in her fading voice. "Don't tell anyone. Not Robert. Not right now. Not, wait until you understand everything. Not, keep it between us for now. Just, not Robert." As if she'd known. As if she'd always known. What the storm revealed. The divorce papers arrived on a Monday morning, 3 weeks after the funeral. Diane was sitting at the kitchen table with her coffee when Robert came downstairs, fully dressed, his work bag already over his shoulder, moving with the deliberate efficiency of someone who had rehearsed what they were about to do. He set an envelope on the table in front of her. She looked at it, then up at him. "What is this?" "I think you know." She opened it slowly. "Read the first page. Set it down. You're filing for divorce. I'm sorry. I know the timing, our mothers. My mother died 3 weeks ago, Robert. I know. And I'm sorry about that. I genuinely am." He had the grace to look uncomfortable, but he didn't sit down. He kept the strap of his bag in his hand, kept the posture of someone who was leaving. "But I can't keep pretending. It's not fair to either of us. Who is she?" The words came out before she'd consciously decided to say them. But they were right. She felt their accuracy the moment they left her mouth. He looked at the table. "There's no one else. Look at me and say that." A long pause. He didn't look up. "Robert." Her voice was quiet, steady. The steadiness surprised even her. "Who is she?" Silence. She already knew. Something had known for weeks, maybe longer, and had simply been waiting for her to be ready to hear it. The part of her that had been watching Serena's expressions, catching half-second looks that didn't quite fit the moment, noticing small absences and strange energies, and the particular way two people sometimes avoid each other's eyes in company because they've spent too much private time looking into them. She knew, but she needed him to say it. He didn't. He just said, "My lawyer will be in touch. I'll come for my things this weekend." And he left. Diane sat at the kitchen table for a very long time after the door closed. She didn't cry. She just sat, her hands flat on the surface of the table, feeling the solidity of it under her palms. Then she picked up her phone and texted Serena. Robert left. He filed for divorce this morning. The response came in under 2 minutes. "What? I'm coming over right now. Don't move." Serena was there within the hour, pulling Diane into a tight hug at the door, her face full of what looked like genuine shock, genuine outrage, genuine love. "He did this now? After everything you've just been through? Who does that?" "I don't know," Diane said. And in that moment, she genuinely wasn't sure what she knew anymore. Serena stayed for hours. She made soup. She sat close on the couch. She said all the right things, with all the right emotions, in exactly the right order. And Diane watched her quietly, from behind the numbness that had settled over everything since her mother died. "Be ready. There's a difference." She saw them on a Saturday afternoon, 6 weeks after the divorce papers arrived. She hadn't been planning to go to that particular part of town. She'd been driving aimlessly, the way she sometimes did on weekends now, moving through the city without destination, thinking. She parked to get coffee from a place she liked, a small independent cafe tucked between a bookstore and a dry cleaner on a quiet street. She was almost at the door when she saw them through the window. A corner table, Robert and Serena. She stopped walking. They were sitting close together. Not the way friends sit. The way people sit when they have stopped needing to perform distance for the outside world. His hand was over hers on the table. She was saying something, her face animated, bright. He was watching her the way Diane hadn't seen him watch anything in years. As she stood on the sidewalk, Serena laughed. Robert leaned in, and he kissed her. Not a long kiss, not dramatic, just the easy, familiar kiss of two people who have done this many times and expect to do it many more. Diane stood very still. People moved around her on the sidewalk, the city continuing its indifferent Saturday business. She felt very calm. A strange, total calm, the kind that lives on the other side of the worst thing, the place you reach after the floor has already fallen out, and you've discovered that you can still stand in the air. She pushed open the door of the cafe and walked to their table. She watched the moment they noticed her, watched the color leave Serena's face, watched Robert go perfectly still. "Diane," Serena said. Her voice was barely audible. Diane looked at her for a long moment, at the face she had known for 15 years, the face that had been there for every significant thing, every celebration, every grief, every ordinary Tuesday that somehow became important later. "How long?" she asked. Serena's mouth opened, closed, open again. "How long?" "Serena." A pause that was its own answer. "We didn't mean for it to happen," Robert said. His voice had the quality of a prepared statement. "Things changed. We both tried to." "How long?" Diane said again, and this time she wasn't asking either of them. She was just saying the words into the space between them, acknowledging the shape of what had happened, the full dimensions of it. Serena's eyes filled. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. You have to know that. I love you, Diane. I still do. That part is real. But you love him more." Serena couldn't answer. Robert shifted in his seat. "The divorce will be final in a few weeks. We're moving forward, all of us, in the direction that makes sense for who we are now." Diane looked at him, then at Serena. Then she did something neither of them expected. She smiled, not with bitterness, not with performance. A small, genuine, private smile, the kind you give when you understand something the other person doesn't know you understand. "You're right," she said. "You should both move in the direction that makes sense." She turned to go. "Diane," Serena said quickly, "please, can we just enjoy your coffee?" Diane said pleasantly, and walked out. Outside, she stood on the sidewalk, her breath coming in controlled, deliberate measures. She looked up at the winter sky, gray and flat and enormous. Then she pulled out her phone and called the number in New York. "Miss Diane," Edward Ashford answered. "Is everything all right?" "I'm ready," she said. "Book me a flight. I want to come this week." A pause. Then, warmly, "We'll have everything ready for you." What she built in the Silence, New York in February was cold in a way that felt intentional. Diane stepped out of the car outside the glass tower on Fifth Avenue and looked up at the building for a moment before going in. 60 floors of steel and light reflecting the gray sky back at itself. The kind of building that says, quietly, that the people inside it have never had to wonder whether they'd be all right. She had come alone. She had told no one where she was going. Edward Ashford was in his late 60s, tall and composed, with the careful warmth of someone who understood that the woman walking toward him had experienced a tremendous amount in a short time and needed competence more than sympathy. He shook her hand, met her eyes, and said simply, "Welcome. Your mother prepared us well for this day. I'm glad it's finally here." They spent the better part of 2 days in conference rooms. Financial advisors, estate attorneys, tax specialists, a woman named Patricia who managed the real estate portfolio and spoke about properties in Atlanta and Charlotte and Phoenix with the ease of someone who had been watching over them for years. A younger man who handled the investment accounts and walked Diane through the market positions her mother had held. The logic behind each one, the extraordinary patience with which Gloria had built and held and, occasionally, very carefully, moved her assets. Diane asked questions, dozens of them. She wasn't embarrassed by what she didn't know because she understood, having been raised by Gloria Mitchell Ashford, that not knowing was simply the beginning of learning, and there was nothing shameful in beginnings. By the end of the second day, she had signed the documents that formally transferred everything into her name. The trusts her mother had established became active. The accounts became accessible. The portfolios became hers to direct. She was, by most measures, one of the wealthiest individuals in the country. She ordered room service in her hotel suite that night, ate it at the window overlooking Central Park, and thought about her mother standing in a cafeteria in a hairnet, smiling at children who needed somebody to see them in the morning. She thought, "I understand everything now." And then she thought, "I know exactly what to do." She flew home on a Thursday. She did not contact Robert or Serena. She found a small apartment on the east side of the city, modest, clean, unremarkable. She kept her old car. She went back to her job at the marketing firm on Monday morning. She smiled at her colleagues, ate lunch at her desk, stayed late when she needed to, went home without fanfare. To anyone watching, she was exactly what she appeared to be, a woman quietly rebuilding a quiet life after loss and betrayal. But in the evenings, after dinner, she opened her laptop and went to work. Robert was a senior consultant at a firm called Meridian Group, well-paying, secure, the kind of job that gave a certain kind of man his sense of himself. He had been there for 7 years and considered himself established, untouchable, even. Diane spent 3 weeks learning everything there was to know about Meridian Group. Its ownership structure, its financial position, its recent performance, the names of its board members, its largest clients, its outstanding contracts. It was held by a private equity firm called Northridge Capital that had been shopping the company quietly for 6 months. Diane called Edward. "I want to acquire Meridian Group," she said. A pause. "Northridge has been looking for the right buyer. It would require some discretion on our end. Complete discretion. I want my name on nothing visible. Use the holding structure we set up." "Understood. I'll make some calls." 3 weeks later, through 4 layers of holding companies, Diane became the majority owner of Meridian Group. She attended her first board meeting as a silent principal, her identity known only to the CEO, a pragmatic man named Howard Chen, who had been briefed privately, who had agreed to the sale because the price was right and the new owner's conditions were straightforward. Run the business well, report honestly, and implement the operational changes that were outlined in writing. The operational changes were simple. Performance reviews for all senior staff, billable hours tracked transparently, client satisfaction scores attached to compensation, promotions and bonuses based on merit only. Robert's numbers when the first review came back were not good. He had been coasting for years on a combination of seniority, personal charm, and the kind of internal politics that insulate people who are good at relationships from scrutiny of their actual work. Under the new system, there was nowhere to hide. His commissions dropped. His clients were reassigned based on performance metrics. He was passed over for a promotion he had been counting on. His manager, following new guidelines, had a direct and uncomfortable conversation with him about expectations. Diane heard about it through quarterly reports. She felt nothing in particular. She noted it and moved on. She was already working on the next part. Serena managed a boutique hotel property downtown for a chain called Clement Hotels. Diane had stayed there once, years ago, for a bachelorette party. She remembered thinking it was fine but overpriced. Clement's Hotels, it turned out, was in significant financial difficulty, overextended, undercapitalized, carrying debt from an aggressive expansion during a bad market period. The parent company was looking for a buyer. Diane made an offer. The deal took 6 weeks to close. Diane installed a new executive team led by a woman named Margaret Osei, who had spent 25 years turning around underperforming hospitality properties and had the reputation of someone who was efficient, fair, and entirely uninterested in office politics. Margaret conducted a full audit. Every property, every department, every manager. Serena's property ranked near the bottom of the portfolio. Revenue flat. Guest scores are mediocre. Staff turnover above average. Several compliance issues that had been flagged and not resolved. Margaret called Serena in on a Thursday morning. Diane was not in that meeting. She had no direct involvement in it. She had simply hired excellent people and given them the tools and the authority to do their jobs. Serena walked out of that meeting pale and shaking, with a formal performance improvement plan in her hands and 60 days to demonstrate she was capable of leading the property she had been leading. As it turned out, not very well. She called Robert from the parking lot, her voice breaking. Robert, already deep in his own professional difficulties, listened for about 4 minutes before saying he had a call he couldn't miss and he'd talk to her tonight. Serena sat in her car for a long time. Spring came, the city softened, the light changed. Diane bought running shoes and started going to the park in the mornings, moving through the early air, feeling her own strength in a way she hadn't for years. She called Edward once a week. She was learning fast, asking better questions every time. The financial advisor, a woman named Christine, had started calling her a natural, which Diane took with appropriate skepticism, but also quietly, some satisfaction. She established her mother's scholarship fund in April, the Naomi Richardson Scholarship for first-generation college students. $20 million to start, with a commitment to grow it annually. Full tuition, room and board, books, a living stipend, and mentorship programming. Partnered with 20 colleges and universities across the country. Edward's team handled the legal structure. A communications firm Diane hired handled the announcement. It was made public on a Tuesday. The story ran in the major outlets by Wednesday morning. A secret billionaire's daughter establishes a major scholarship fund in late mother's honor. Photographs of Diane, composed and elegant, holding a framed photograph of Gloria. Details of the estate, the hidden history, the extraordinary life Gloria had led. Diane's phone ran hot for 3 days. Former colleagues, distant relatives, old classmates, people she hadn't spoken to in years, all calling with warmth and congratulations, and the particular energy of people recalibrating their understanding of someone they thought they'd known. 2 calls notably did not come. Robert, Serena, Diane knew they'd seen it. Everyone had seen it. She imagined them in their apartment, staring at their phones, the full scale of what they had so casually walked away from becoming clear in a way it couldn't have been before. She didn't call them. She didn't need to. What she became, the charity gala, was held at the Whitmore Hotel on a Friday evening in May. Diane wore a deep emerald gown, simple and precise, and arrived without an escort, which generated its own quiet commentary in the room. She moved through the space with the easy, unhurried confidence of someone who no longer needed approval from the room she was in. She was introduced to a city councilwoman, a hospital foundation director, a woman who ran a nonprofit literacy program and had already applied for scholarship partnership funding. Diane talked with all of them with genuine interest, asking real questions, listening to the answers. Halfway through the evening, she felt the shift in energy before she saw the cause. She turned. Robert and Serena were near the entrance, both of them having clearly just arrived, and both of them, equally clearly, having just seen her. They looked different than they had in the coffee shop 4 months ago. Robert was thinner, tighter around the eyes. Serena had the look of someone managing an ongoing internal difficulty with limited success. The easy brightness Diane had watched from the sidewalk was not present tonight. Diane excused herself from her conversation and walked over. "Robert, Serena," she smiled. "I didn't expect to see you here." Robert looked like a man who had been rehearsing something and had now forgotten it entirely. Diane, you look. I heard about the scholarship fund. It's thank you," she said simply. Serena's eyes were bright in the way eyes get when someone is trying very hard not to cry in public. "Diane, I've been wanting to reach out. I didn't know if—" "You could have," Diane said. Her voice was neither warm nor cold, it was simply honest. "I would have answered. A beat." "I'm sorry," Serena said. I know it's not enough, but I'm genuinely sorry." Diane looked at her. At the face she had loved and trusted and known, the face that had been there the night her mother died, the face she had watched laugh across a coffee shop table while Robert kissed her. "I know you are," Diane said. And she meant it. She could see the regret. It was real. She had no desire to deny its existence. "If you knew that what you had would change," she said then, carefully, to both of them. "If you knew what you were walking away from, would you have made different choices?" Robert opened his mouth. Diane shook her head slightly. "I'm not asking to hear the answer. I'm just asking you to sit with the question. That's all." She looked at Serena once more. "I hope you're well. I genuinely do." And then she turned and walked back into the room. Serena's performance improvement plan ended 3 weeks later. She had not turned the property around. Margaret made the decision without consulting Diane, because that was what Margaret had been hired to do. The termination was handled professionally, with appropriate notice and a legal severance package. Robert was laid off the following month as part of a restructuring at Meridian Group. Howard Chen had reviewed the division carefully and made the business case for consolidation. Robert's role, as structured, was redundant. His severance was adequate. His professional references were lukewarm. The job market for senior consultants with mediocre performance metrics in a competitive city was not forgiving. The engagement, Diane heard from a mutual acquaintance, had been quietly called off sometime in June. The Cabo wedding never happened. She did not feel triumphant when she heard this. She felt something more like the quiet, complete feeling you get when a long, complicated piece of music finally resolves into its final chord. Not joy, exactly. More like the satisfaction of something being simply finished. In the summer, Diane hired a team of architects to renovate a historic building in the neighborhood where she'd grown up. A former community center that had been shuttered for years, its windows boarded, its facade faded and overlooked. She had it restored to its original design, with additions: a modern library wing, an after-school program space, a commercial kitchen for a culinary training program, and a rooftop garden accessible to residents of the neighborhood. On the front of the building, above the entrance, she had a name engraved in the stone: the Gloria Mitchell Community Center. Not Ashford, not the dynastic family name her mother had left behind. Mitchell, the name she had chosen for herself. The name she had made mean something with her own hands, in her own time, entirely on her own terms. The opening ceremony was on a Saturday in August, a warm morning full of light. The neighborhood turned out in a way that made the street feel like a celebration. Children running between adults' legs, older residents who remembered when the building was alive the first time, standing with their hands on their hearts. Diane stood at the podium and looked out at all of it. She thought about her mother working a cafeteria shift at 5 in the morning, smiling at children who needed somebody to see them. She understood now that it wasn't irony, it wasn't performance, it wasn't humility for its own sake, it was love, expressed in the simplest, most direct way available. These children need somebody to see them in the morning. Diane looked out at the people in front of her, at the building that bore her mother's chosen name, at the neighborhood that would be different now, because of what Gloria had built in the shadows, and what Diane had chosen to do with it in the light. She leaned into the microphone. "My mother taught me something that I didn't fully understand until recently," she said. "She taught me that the most powerful thing you can be is exactly who you are, without apology, without performance, and without ever letting the people who underestimate you know how far ahead of them you already are." Laughter from the crowd, warm, knowing. She was the strongest person I have ever known, and she spent her life making sure I would be strong enough to stand here today. She paused. "I'm going to spend the rest of mine making sure her name means something in every city I can reach." The applause was long. The storm always ends on a Sunday evening in September, almost a year to the day after her mother's diagnosis. Diane sat at the desk in her home office. The city was visible through the window, luminous and indifferent as always, going about its enormous life with no awareness of the small human life unfolding at this particular window. Her mother's letter was framed on the wall. She didn't read it anymore. She didn't need to. She had become it. On her desk was a list of the year's scholarship recipients. 212 students from 31 states, starting college in the fall. First generation, starting with nothing but intelligence and ambition, and the drive that comes from knowing that no one is going to hand you anything. She thought about her mother seeing the list. She thought about the expression that would have been on Gloria's face. Not surprise, because Gloria had always known this was where it was all going. That had been the whole plan, the whole long, patient, extraordinary plan. Diane picked up her phone and called Edward. "Just wanted to check in," she said when he answered. "Everything is running smoothly," he said. "How are you, really?" She considered the question honestly. "Good," she said. "Actually good, like genuinely. I don't know when that happened exactly, but it did." She could hear the smile in his voice. "Your mother would be so proud of you. I want you to know I believe that completely." Diane's throat tightened in the good way, the way it did now when she thought about her mother. The grief was still there. It would always be there. But it had shifted in the way that grief eventually does, when you let it, from an open wound into something more like a presence, a warmth, a strength. "I know she would," Diane said. "I know." After they hung up, she turned back to the desk. The scholarship files, the property reports from Patricia, the quarterly numbers from Meridian and Clement, both of which were performing better now under the leadership she'd put in place. The proposal for a second community center, this one in Charlotte, which had come in that morning from the architecture firm. So much to do. She picked up her pen. She thought about her mother at a cafeteria counter at 5 in the morning, in a hairnet, smiling at a child who needed to be seen. She thought, "That's what love looks like when it isn't performing." She thought, "That's what I want to spend my life doing." Outside, the city burned gold and amber in the late September light. The storm had come and gone. She had stood in it, been remade by it, emerged from it into something she didn't have a word for yet, but that felt in every possible way like exactly who she was supposed to be, her mother's daughter. Still standing. "Now I want to hear from you. Because this story isn't just about wealth or justice, it's about what people show you about themselves when they believe you have nothing left. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who was supposed to love you? Have you ever had a moment where you realized, finally, just how strong you actually were? Drop your answer in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story moved you, if any part of it felt true to something you've lived, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Sometimes the most powerful thing we can do for each other is say, "The storm doesn't get the last word. I'll see you in the next one."